Welcome back to another episode of Rock Boys Football. Shane Beamer. The South Carolina Gamecocks have been one of, if not the hottest team in all of college football over the last couple of weeks. And, last week about this time, we had a little bit of a sit down conversation and, talked about the pathway for South Carolina to make the 12-team college football playoffs. And I think we all agreed that, yeah, this is a team that is trending in that direction, but they probably need a little bit of help around them in order to get there. This Saturday, South Carolina got all the help that they needed. Indiana going on the road, getting blown out against Ohio State. We'll be interested to see where the committee puts Indiana Tuesday night. Alabama, 24-3 loss against an Oklahoma team that South Carolina just beat 35-9 on October 19th, and Ole Miss goes down to Florida. I mean, South Carolina, they've been taking care of business themselves. But I think more importantly, the things are starting to fall in place around them to give them a real shot. And I think if you're a South Carolina fan, you're fired up about the opportunity to go on the road against a top 15 ranked team in Clemson and send kind of that last message to the College Football Playoff Committee that South Carolina is a college football playoff caliber team. Now, there's two different conversations I want to get into. One, I want to look at the resume that South Carolina has built up over the month of November. And then more importantly, talk about what we've seen from this South Carolina team. It's so important to remember. A lot of us, and I've been extremely guilty of making this mistake in the past. You can't look at a team in September and assume that that's the team they're going to be in the month of October and November. We see teams go in the right direction. We see teams go in the wrong direction. I don't think there's a team that's more improved over the course of 2024 than South Carolina. Want to get into some of the takeaways we've seen from South Carolina on the football field as well. Now, before we get into it, as always, to the South Carolina fans, one, would love to hear from you on the comments section. I think, when we had this conversation a week ago, it was kind of just, optimism, guarded optimism, if you will. I think you fast forward to this week and say it's legitimate optimism that South Carolina, at the very least, is going to be in that conversation for that 12-team college football playoff spot. Would love to hear from you on the comment section. A shout out to the Gamecock fans. It's been a blast talking this team in 2024 and kind of tracking the development of Shane Beamer in this program. The amount of support y'all continue to show, it's been amazing. Appreciate you guys. If y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. Well, let's get into this one. Let's start with the resume that they've built up. Now, you look at all three losses. They haven't lost a football game since October 12th on the road against Alabama. You look at three of their losses. One was a 2-point road loss to Alabama. One was a 3-point loss to LSU, where we all watched that football game. We all saw how it was officiated and called. And I'm not blaming it on the refs, but I'm saying that was a game that could have gone either way in plenty of different directions. Since October 12th, South Carolina has been 5-0, 4-0 in the SEC. Only one game has been a less than 20-point victory for South Carolina. That was at home against Missouri. They've not only won, they've won emphatically against a lot of good teams. You look at Oklahoma. That's an Oklahoma team that just beat Alabama 24-3. You look at Texas A&M. That was a top 10 ranked Texas A&M team when they beat them. Missouri, they're still a top 25 ranked team. And you're talking about a Missouri team that played South Carolina, and that was the best version of Missouri we've seen. And then they go on the road to play a Vanderbilt team that normally is the doormat of the SEC. They have had plenty of good wins and are a legitimate good SEC team in 2024. It's not just cakewalks. I mean, these wins in the SEC have been legitimate, impressive wins for South Carolina. And I think to cap it all off, they got an opportunity to go on the road and beat a Clemson team that will probably be a top 15 ranked, maybe even top 12 ranked team in the college football playoff rankings come Tuesday night. So South Carolina not only has a legitimate resume built up, they got an opportunity to really bolster that resume when a lot of other teams around them don't really have that chance. I mean, you look at Ole Miss, another 3-loss SEC team that South Carolina has lost a head-to-head to. They play Mississippi State. That's not going to be a chance for Ole Miss to kind of send a message to the committee. Alabama plays Auburn at home. That's a sub-500 team in the SEC. Now, I think Auburn is a good team that could potentially knock off Alabama, but that's not going to be that much of an opportunity for Alabama to bolster their resume. On the road at Clemson, that is an opportunity to really send a message to the college football playoff committee. And I think last but not least, you look at the college football playoff committee and how they evaluate and historically how they've selected teams into the college football playoffs. It's a what have you done for me lately kind of selection. They are willing to overlook some losses in the month of September if you've shown you're a better football team in the month of November than you were in September. I can't think of a team that better fits that bill outside of probably South Carolina and the Florida Gators. Like those are the two teams that you look at and say you had big time question marks about them in September. You fast forward to the end of November, those are two teams that are playing real good football. Now, Florida, unfortunately, doesn't have a chance to get into that conversation. South Carolina does, because they not only have a strong resume right now, will probably clock in as a top 15 ranked team in the college football playoff rankings come Tuesday night, but they also have that opportunity to really bolster their stock on the road against Clemson. Not a lot of other teams have that going into the last week of the season. Now, what has changed with South Carolina? What have we seen from South Carolina on the football field that has resulted in South Carolina morphing into one of the most dangerous teams in all of college football? I'm comfortable saying that. You look at the South Carolina team, I go back to a South Carolina fan. This was maybe the best comment we've ever gotten in the comment section. A South Carolina fan probably after that loss to Alabama, back when South Carolina still had some question marks, right? LaNorris Sellers turning the ball over, offensive line had question marks. That South Carolina fan said, my favorite part about South Carolina right now is they have the opportunity to beat just about everybody in the country. And I couldn't have agreed with South Carolina how this team is made up. They were a dangerous team all of 2024. Now the consistency, that was kind of another story. You started to see South Carolina find that consistency, and I don't think anybody kind of resembles that stronger than quarterback LaNorris Sellers. You know, a guy that we knew there'd be some growing pains. We certainly saw those growing pains in the month of September. You take a look at LaNorris Sellers and his numbers right now. One, pushing the ball down the field, 51% completion percentage, 20-plus yards down the field. That's a higher completion percentage than some quarterbacks just have, period. And LaNorris Sellers is completing 51% of his balls when they travel 20-plus yards down the field. Yeah, South Carolina has figured out what their identity is on offense. We want to run the football, but when we decide to throw the football, we're going to push it vertically. We have legitimate pass catchers on the outside that can work vertically. We're going to talk about the ones that have stepped up. They found their recipe on offense, and you kind of look back and say 44 points on a Texas A&M team, 28 against Vanderbilt, probably could have scored more, 34 against Missouri. You're starting to see this South Carolina offense play their best football. Now, you look at LaNorris Sellers when he's kept clean, and this is a very impressive number. When LaNorris Sellers is kept clean in the pocket, 70% completion percentage, 14 touchdowns to 1 interception. And as a result, you've kind of seen this offensive line start playing better too. That's probably a nice segue to talk about the offensive line, which was, I wouldn't say a disaster early in the year, but it was a young offensive line that was starting a true freshman at left tackle with a couple new faces in the transfer portal. It was an offensive line that was not very good to start 2024. It has been much better over the last couple of weeks. And so as the South Carolina offensive line continues to improve, it's not a coincidence that LaNorris Sellers is starting to play better football too, because when this kid is kept clean, he's accurate with the football. He's pushing the ball down the field. When you watch LaNorris Sellers play, you can just feel that command of the offense. Where you go back to early September, it was a little bit more of like that backyard football. He seemed like the moment was big for him, which would make sense. He's a young quarterback that hasn't had a ton of experience at the college level. The biggest difference between LaNorris Sellers is he just seems more in command, knows what he's doing. He's not thinking as much, and he's just going out there and playing. He threw that one, sloppy interception against Wofford where it was not a bad decision. He was just late with the football. Like when you're trying to push it from the opposite hash to the boundary, you got to throw those earlier. Safeties have the opportunity to break on it and get their hands on it. Once he threw that pick, he was lights out the rest of the game. And again, it's Wofford, but you're seeing LaNorris Sellers take those strides along with the offensive line, giving him a better run game and giving him cleaner pockets to work from. And then the last thing on offense, the emergence of these wide receivers. Is it the best wide receiver room in the country? No, probably not. But they're starting to lean into what these wide receivers do well. You look at Delvin Campbell. You look at a guy like Nick Harbor. What are they great at? really good at working vertically down the field. And so Shane Beamer down line is, hey, we got wide receivers that can really work vertically. We got a quarterback that can throw the football extremely well down the field. That's what we're going to lean into. We might not be a passing attack that completes 75% of our balls, but when we do complete them, we're going to hit explosive plays. And that's kind of what you've seen. You've seen a South Carolina offense that wants to be run centered with a really good. We should probably mention Rocket Sanders as another guy that is just looks like a different football player in the month of November. We want to run the football, force teams to bring safeties into the box to respect that run game, and then we want to throw it over the top. That recipe has worked in a big way for South Carolina. Now, you look at the defense, and I'm just going to read the defensive numbers. I don't think I'm giving any groundbreaking analysis here. This defense is one of the best units in the country. The South Carolina schedule is, depending on what power ranks you look at, is around 15 to 20th hardest in the country. So what I'm saying is I'm going to read these defensive numbers, and just in the back of your mind, keep in mind that these are not cupcake games that South Carolina's played. They've played legitimate good football teams. This is how South Carolina grades out. 18.8 points per game allowed, 13th best in the country. 4.4 yards per play allowed, that's 7th best in the country. 3.1 yards per carry, that's number 8 in the country. A 57% completion percentage allowed, that's 23rd in the country. They're sacking the quarterback 10.2% of the time. That's number 3 in the country. They're forcing 2 turnovers per game, number 8 in the country. Almost every single metric you look at for the South Carolina defense, it's about top 15 in the country. And as a result, you're looking at one of the best defenses that we see not only in the SEC but in the country. So you start combining all these factors. I think the most notable one being that the month of November, South Carolina has looked like one of the best teams in the country. They have an elite defense that has been elite all year with an offense that has really started to figure out what they want to do with a quarterback that is starting to play some really good football down the stretch. If South Carolina beats Clemson on the road, in my opinion, they should be a college football playoff team, and they're going to be damn dangerous in it as well. We'll cut it out there. Appreciate you guys rocking with it. If y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel, and we'll talk to y'all later. Peace.